We will now have the session on meditation by Dr. Shilpa Pandit. Dr. Shilpa Ashok Pandit is a trained psychologist, researcher, trainer, and a counselor. She has a rich experience in all aspects of psychological practice. Her interest in arts and spirituality started about 10 years back when she wanted to find a meaning about the emotional turbulence she was going through in her personal life. Many a times, she found that the performances on stage seemed to mirror her personal life. Many other times, the emotion performed on stage was completely dissonant with her present experience, yet something she had wanted to be or feel. These observations started a process of research over the years, where she has been able to read texts on rasa, meet great art teachers and aspiring students. She has published a few papers in academic journals, but more importantly, she has always checked and cross-validated at every step whether the texts and the views of the performers resonate with the churning that people experience as they encounter life. The intention of art was to engage with the people and convey the essential and eternal messages of living a life of well-being. So says the sage Bharat. If life has to find an enhanced relevance, then it's recharged through art. If arts are to remain relevant, then they must reflect the essential concerns, the unspoken yearning of a living life. Shilpa is going to share her research insights in these 2 days at Samagama. Thank you.
My name is Shilpa, and I am a psychologist. I've been working on some bits of rasa and meditation. So yesterday we had an interesting discussion. So this is a workshop, and we are equals. So I'm neither a guru nor am I a mentor in this way. I think we are all equals. We have lived our lives, and we have a bit to share with each other. So in that respect, we would, and also in the spirit of a workshop, we'll have more of a discussion and then a bit of practice. So as what we left off yesterday was the connection between art and life. And I'll just summarize it for the new friends who have joined here. So we first looked at art and life. And there was one particular reference that I mentioned was the Taittiriya Upanishad in the Indian thought, which is in the Krishna Yajurveda Shakha of the Yajurveda, which talks about 2 or 3 words which are very important. The first word comes is rasa, and the second word that comes is ananda. And they come very close with each other as descriptions of what is the state of mind and life. So there is one particular richa, which is raso vai saha, which has been an inspiration for all the scholars in Indian thought, all the philosophers, all the saints. And people have interpreted it from their own point of view. So, since Mylapore is the center of Tamil Nadu, of Chennai, Advait thought has thought about Rasovai Saha in a different way. The Vishishta Advait thought has thought about it in a different way. And they have interpreted the meaning of rasa. But the fact is that rasa is central then to the idea of well-being. So if we want to live a good life, then we talk of rasa. In Hindi sometimes when I used to work in the hospital and I used to say, kaisa chal raha hai? It means how is life and all. They would say, ras nahi hai. Means there is no rasa. They would say, niras hai. Niras means meaningless. So it is there in our languages even now. And that was the first thing that we discussed. And then we also saw that rasa is used in Natya also. So we have great artists here like Indira and Vijna and Ranjit and Sri Ram Prasad. And they constantly use the word rasa, and people are called rasikas. So we discussed the meaning of rasa both as self-realization, which is what it is in Upanishads, and rasa in Natya. And is there a connection between the two? Because yesterday we were discussing art and life and a discourse. So So is there a connection between art and life, or the art of life, right? So this is what we started with, and with the way I have lived a little bit of experiences, I find that there are things that we experience. We go up, we go through ups and we go through downs. For small things, for big things, we are constantly in a state of turbulence. But when we see that turbulence on the stage, it gives us happiness. But when we go through the turbulence, it doesn't give us happiness. So there is something about rasa on the stage, and which is unique. That was the second point that we discussed. And the third point was in Kash. This whole idea of rasa was then later developed by in the bhakti movement and by great masters and practitioners. And one of them was Acharya Abhinav Gupta. And even now, his contribution to Natya as well as Tantra as well as Shaiva thought is so huge that some people say that life stopped after his contribution, his great contribution. So he came, in one of his texts, he writes a brilliant statement. He says, Nartaka Atma, Rango Antaratma, which means the dancer is the self, or the self is the dancer. And Ranga means stage, Ranga Pravesham and all that. Rango Antaratma, the inner self is the stage on which the self dances. So that in Kashmiri Shaiva thought, there is this Shiva Shakti concept is there. And this is similar to that. Without getting into any details, this was the third point. And we had a discussion on this, and people said, yeah, the world is a stage. The world is a stage on which we are dancing. But the point is, are we aware that we are dancing, and what are we dancing? That is the connection between art and life. If what kind of dance we are doing till now, till 40 years, 50 years, what is my dance? And so we did a small meditation on seeing our own self. So Nartaka Atma, Rango Antaratma means that I see my own self dancing. And it is amazing that in our discussion, without any theoretical background, today I am summarizing and giving some theoretical this and that, but yesterday we all discussed this without going to the text. We discussed it from our experience first. So the element of seeing what we are feeling and emoting is key to both meditation and dance. And the fact that we are able to see our emotion getting enacted gives us insight. And that probably helps us to enjoy that emotion. That is what Acharya Abhinav Gupta said. He said, and just let's last one bit and then we'll go again into discussion on the next part. So what he said was that why is it that people, when they see even difficult emotions like vibhatsa or anger or shoka, there is a sense of satisfaction. Yesterday one of the participants' friends said that even when I hear deeply sad songs, I feel good about it, When she hears sad songs, she feels good. So there is a kind of a resonance about all emotions that we see when we are slightly detached from that emotion. So he analyzed that whole experience, Acharya Abhinav Gupta. And he said, what happens when you see on stage something? So first stage, in simply he said, is Sadrush Karana, which means the emotion is presented to you. The second stage, he said, is, Kalanidhi Mami explained to me that in Sadrish Karana, they also explore all the possible interpretations of that emotion. In Sadharini Karana, everybody experiences it the same way. Like yesterday, we had a brilliant performance by an Odissi dancer, and all of us, right from Mangalacharan, we were in the same state of mind, right? That is called Sadharani Karana. Sadharan, it becomes Sadharan. From Asadharan, it becomes Sadharan. And then he says the person feels Vishranta, means conformed, happy, peaceful. And Samvid knows the movement of emotion. So this is what we discussed yesterday. We will start another discussion today, and then we will go to meditation, if that is all right with all of you. Yeah. So what point that we wanted to discuss was, there were two things, two streams of thought yesterday. One was, one of our friends said, I'm not going to think too much about emotions. I'm not going to intellectualize it. I'm just going to immerse myself in it. So we said, okay, so are you ready to pay for the consequences of that? Because if you're totally immersed in your emotions, you have to pay for the consequences of that. And there was another thought, one participant friend here said, one of the volunteers in fact, she said, no, I think we need to detach just a little bit so that we can take care of it. So today we are going to have a small discussion on this whole idea of immersing yourself into something. And so what do you think? What does it mean to be immersed in something? I would like your views as you have lived life. Is that okay? Yeah.
For me, yeah, completely unaware of the surroundings, the time, everything, and whole focus is just on that work. You don't even feel that you need to eat or anything. It just keeps completely immersed in that. Yeah. On பண்ணுமா அது?
What happens after that? So ma'am, you're telling me three things. One is you're saying you lose a sense of time. Second is you're telling me that you even forget your food and your sleep, right? Okay. So are you saying that you're doing this all the time, or you're moving, shifting from states? Okay. Any other thought here? My question is, does it happen all the time in your life? No? Then when does it happen? What are the ways in which we can access that absorption?
I mean, I wish it would happen all the time, but I think some things absorb you more just because of how much you care about it and what meaning it gives you. But ideally, everything you do would absorb you as much as whatever it is that's special to you.
So what I understood from ma'am here was that it absorbs you, and importantly you lose a sense of time, and you lose a sense of even basic things like food and sleep. What I get from sir is that there is a distinction he drew, very fine distinction between things that he cares about and they seem to absorb him more, and things that don't, he doesn't seem to care about. So there is a judgment happening here, right? And so any other thought on this?
I feel when you involve too much, there won't be clarity of thinking. You won't be able to think clearly. You will be emotionally guided rather than do what is right or what is wrong in that situation, maybe. I feel that way.
Any other thought? My question would be, if that is an ideal state of absorption, would we like to be there all the time? You wish, but what about others? Would you like to be there all the time? Why? Why, ma'am?
Then only you can think rationally about that and discuss and think. Clarity of thought will be there. When you get detached from the position. When it happens to others, I can think clearly and suggest solutions for their problems and other things. But when it happens to me, it's not so. The clarity of thought is lost when you are personally affected. Yes.
Any other views here? Any other views about this? Okay, so what I got from this side is, the state of absorption has been called as flow in psychology, in modern psychology. And they say it is a sign of a very creative and a very alive moment. And the connection between meditation and flow or creative moments is this sense of absorption. And it is also that we lose our sense of self in these moments. However, what happens is a very true point that you said, that if we completely lose ourselves in that moment, we do not have the, we lose our vyavhara, the pragmatic moorings of it. And that is precisely what happened in the early in the 11th century, when they were discussing this relationship between personal emotion and well-being, or rasa and bhava. Bhava is, they say, is a personal emotion, and rasa is the larger shared well-being. And there were two kinds of scholars, or two types, ranged on one side and the other. At one side were people who said you need detachment in order to live life. And they said we need meditation to have that seeing view, that sakshi, rasik. Rasika means a person who sees. In fact, Abhinav Gupta said a person who performs cannot experience rasa, because he is so caught up in performing. He is so caught up in performing that he cannot see. That is what Abhinav Gupta said. And one of the very beautiful poets in Maharashtra, he said that, he said a very beautiful poem. He said, Kumudini kaya zane to parimala. Means the flower doesn't know its fragrance. So there is a beauty in not knowing also. He said, Kumudini means the flower. It doesn't know its fragrance. It's only the Brahmara who comes and looks for a flower, right? So that's another way of not knowing and yet doing. To be totally absorbed and not knowing that one is absorbed also, right? But other part of it is when we do not know, we become mindless, which is what your point was. At one end, not knowing, not seeing stops us from insight. At another end, we must give up knowing to go to innocence. In between is knowing, in between is seeing. So we had Abhinav Gupta who said seeing and detachment is very important. At another level were these great bhakti saints. Bhakti was moving at that time. And they said that we don't need to know. They said this point, I don't need to intellectualize. I don't need to see. I don't need to know. I just need to immerse myself. So the same question came, that if you totally immerse yourself, you will be branded as crazy, mad, foolish. So, and also attached. So the question of attachment. So one great philosopher called Rupa Goswami, he gave the concept of bhakti as a rasa. Before that, till Abhinav Gupta contributed one rasa. He said Shanta. Shanta was contributed by Abhinav Gupta. He said, when we see with quietness and we get insight, the rasa is Shanta. When we find happiness in all the emotions around and we don't get moved by them, the rasa that we experience is Shanta. We find peace. And he said this is the highest that you can get. All of us, when we see art, when we see Ravana's anger or ego, we still find it's okay. Or we, even in our meditations, or when we forgive others, out of sheer understanding. Okay, yeah, galti ho gaya. We find Shanta rasa. But amazingly, most amazingly, Rupa Goswami put, and Abhinav Gupta put Shanta as the highest. Rupa Goswami in his he said Bhakti is a rasa, Bhagavad Rati, love for God. And in that love for God, I'll go mad. He said, I don't care for detachment at all. And most amazingly, he put Shanta at the lowest level of rasa. Amazing. Abhinav Gupta puts it at the highest level. He says, he also says Bhagavad Rati. He also discusses bhakti. But he says, Shanta is the highest that you can have with detachment, because you are seeing outside. And Rupa Goswami says, Shanta is the lowest when you are totally immersed. Because what's his logic? Most interestingly, Rupa Goswami's logic is, how can you be detached with Krishna around? For him, Krishna is his object of love, Vishaya. his idea of love is so intense that he says, how can you be detached with when you are relating yourself to Krishna? So Shanta is the lowest and Madhura, Shrungara is the highest. Where you are allowed to go through all kinds of temper tantrums and all kinds of things that, you know, between a love between a man and a woman. Now what happens in this kind of a conceptualization of bhakti? Two implications. One is, if you live life intensely, what Rupa Goswami is saying, you live life intensely, you are going to get rasa. That's called prakarsha, you know. So you don't need insight, just live your life absolutely intensely. You in prakarsha, you know, strong intensity, you are very close to God. You are with God then. He says, that is rasa. And the other opinion on this side is, you should not do that. The maximum that you can get is shanti, where you can get peace. Now what do you think? Because it's our view now. So what happens, one implication, the second implication of getting totally immersed and absorbed is, he says bhakti is lokabhaya. It cannot work in this world. It becomes lokabhaya, out of this world. And that is the reason why we had so many saints, all new, they are lokabhaya. If you want that kind of an immersion, then the consequence that you pay for it is, you are not understood by the world. That he very clearly says, lokabhaya. Bhakti is lokabhaya. Bhagavad Rati in the sense of that intensity is lokabhaya. So what do you think about this bit? What would your view be? Would you like to live? Because you know what happens in India or in the world now, that we have so many concepts floating around. When we say meditation, we need to see how it cross-validates with your experience of life, with my experience of life. Does it make sense to me? Otherwise, concepts are concepts. So does it happen to you? Have you ever, so how do we say, has it ever happened that you have taken a decision full of intensity and you have fought with people about it? Then that is one way of Rati, Bhagavad Rati. So what is your view on that? Anybody, any thought, any rebellion here?